the entertainment highlight of the week.
Red Ray Gun Limited presents
The Benji and Nick Show. Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good Friday.
Topical, I like it. Good afternoon.
Good Easter egg.
Good shot.
Good Kit Kat.
Goodness gracious.
Good silver paper wrapped around my Easter egg.
Good tidings we bring.
Good evening.
Good haircut.
I haven't got a good hair. Goodness.
Loch Ness. Excellent.
Caught me out with the old inaccuracy trick. Well, that was the Loch Ness game. It isn't a game, and it's not about Loch Ness.
But this is the Benji and Nick Show, the #1 cult television podcast out there on the internet.
So exciting.
You know, it is. Well,
and now over to the regional news desk.
Hello there, yes, I'm just going to be sitting here doing the regional news here today. Sitting at my desk. So Reginald Stiles left his house somewhat about midday. Nick, of course, is referring as well to my Zoom background, which is the Southern News and Weather background, which looks surprisingly realistic, actually. It looks rather good.
Good, yes. Benji did the Southern News and Weather regional news voice before we started recording. So
and she just talks like this, very softly. You know,
today, a badger was seen in the forest.
He was holding a gun. And had robbed several banks. We now talk to a squirrel who was there at the scene of the crime.
We're just both
fascinating
doing the same
words. I think
joke.
you all agree. Yes. Anyway, this is we talk about cold television, TV from the past, TV you might remember, TV you might want to forget. This week we're doing Space Precinct: The Fire Within Part 2, won't we, Nick? And what else is coming up?
Well, we'll be inviting actor and author Richard James along to talk about it too. He was in Space Precinct as Officer Hubble Orin and has written a book all about the series. He's also a great friend of our great friend Jamie Anderson, and we sort of know him. We don't know him that well, but you know, we know him to chat to. Old Richard, old Ricky boy, we'll call him in his absence, so he can't hear us abusing his name. Ricky Bicky Woo Wah,
Mr. R, Mr. R. Que sera, sera.
So he is at this moment sitting at home thinking, why has my Zoom invitation not come? Because they said they'd be doing it now. But we were too busy talking about Southern television and the theme of Day by Day.
This is what we do. This is the thing. If you just inserted a microphone into our throats and just kept it on record, it would just be like an extended 24-hour version of the podcast.
I'm just telling him that we're running 20 minutes late.
We're running a little bit late, but it's okay because Michael Fish will be doing the weather in a minute. One listener actually sent us a message in saying that she thinks there might be a hurricane, but according to him, he doesn't see that happening.
Listen, by the way, I'm not Benji,
and I'm not Nick. But first, so we'll be doing all of that, but first we've got our emails, so that'll be in a moment, and you can send your emails to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com, and if you're lucky enough, we might read them out. But first, the Benji and Nick Show is proud to be sponsored by The Village Shop, the online e-store run by the Unmutual website and Coit Media Limited. Your one-stop shop for all things Prisoner, Danger Man and Patrick McGoohan, including DVDs, Blu-rays, books, CDs, audio dramas, clothing, photos, homeware and gifts. New items are added weekly, so it's always worth going back there and checking it out. And because we love you all, Benji and Nick Show listeners can also enjoy a special 10% discount on all purchases by using the code LOCHNESS10 at the checkout. A further donation will also be made to Hope House Children's Hospice at no extra cost to you. So to go to that, you go to the address www.theprisonershop.co.uk. Don't put .co.uk. .cook. Nick, have you got anything on there to take a little peek at?
Yeah, I don't know whether you've mentioned this one before. It's a CD that's available on there called Escape in Time.
No, I'm not, but it sounds great.
It's a good title, isn't it? The Avengers, Danger Man, The Strange World of Gurney Slade, The Saint, incidental music from The Prisoner, and much more. So it's a collection of all sorts of interesting music. What the Papers Say, Monty Python's Flying Circus, and Jeff Love's adaptation of Eric Spear's theme, originally entitled Lancashire Blues, for Coronation Street. That will get your juicy. Jukebox Jury. Well, there you go. There's loads of stuff here. Johnny Dankworth's suitably dapper original theme is included here.
That's a good one for the car, isn't it?
Yeah, Johnny Dankworth's original theme of The Avengers, of course. Yes. Yeah. Wow. It is a good one for the car. So there you go. That's my pick from the Village Shop this week.
And as well as that, you can also use your additional code, which is Good Gravy, all capital letters, no spaces, and that'll get you 40% off the book Playboys, Spies and Private Eyes, inspired by ITC. A blurb of the book is on the website. Is that for us to read out, or I'll just ignore that bit? Inspired by ITC. Ricky Davey informs us we're adding a used collectibles section.
It's really Rick Davey. I don't know why I put Ricky Davey.
I don't know. I like it. It makes him say a bit of a geezer, old Ricky Davey. Do you know what I mean? He's a bit of a rogue.
He's going to be appalled by that. Sorry, Rick.
But they're going to be adding used collectibles section with one-off items, so vintage stuff like movie posters and stuff like that, to the website too. So there's just loads to look forward to, really. So yes, to sum it all up, Loch Ness 10 is the code that's still available, but also 40% off if you use Good Gravy at the checkout on the ITC book. Simple as that.
Good. Let's have a look at the emails. Do you want to read the first one?
I certainly can. Original message -- subject Twin Peaks, date 2020-04-8-1647 from Hugh McIlroy. Yes. See, that was the actual literal reading of what was put in.
That was literal. You didn't do the dashes before it says original messages.
Copy and paste the last dashes and just repeat it. That'll do.
Okay.
With the 30th anniversary of Twin Peaks coming up, actually gone by the time that you read this, can we have the first episode of Twin Peaks in a future podcast, please? It was a fantastic show and perfect for the Benji and Nick show, or the Bedge and Nick show, as it says in this email. It's a damn fine show, as is this show, of course. Hope you're both well, and thanks for giving a bit of light in these dark times. Well, do you know what? It's not actually a bad idea. Have you
seen Twin Peaks?
Yeah, I've recently got into Twin Peaks, actually. Mainly because I heard the theme tune and the title sequence and thought it was so incredible.
I used to listen to that a lot. Yeah, and I did like it to start with, but it got so weird I fell out of love with it. But yeah, I would love the opportunity to look at it again. Where will we find it? Is it on YouTube or?
I have no idea. We'll have to do some research.
Okay. Right.
To do some research. But
yeah, that's something we must do. Yes, he was always going on about damn fine. Was it cherry pie? Yeah.
I think it is.
Damn fine cherry pie from Ed's Diner. Yeah, I remember Peter Davison was really into Twin Peaks. I remember him talking about it a lot.
It's a good show. It's different, isn't it?
Oh, well, that's for darn sure. A note from Tom Hodden to our Facebook page, the Benji and Nick Show Cult TV podcast, sent on the 10th of April. Yes, that's today. Yes. The day we're recording it, of course, not today, the day you're listening to it. In the year 0847. Gents, I've made some changes to the bookings on your Meet the Fans coach holiday excursion. Evergreen Forest is off the agenda because the raccoons are acting suspiciously and the authorities are worried they might be rabid, tripping, or the next stage in evolution.
Or all three, quite frankly.
Jellystone Park is still open, although I have heard some worrying suggestions that a grizzly bear has been mugging people for their picnic baskets and formal neckwear. On the other hand, I have managed to make alternate arrangements to visit Eternia, which is only technically a war zone, Endor, and the Lake of Mutations, which is now offering boat trips to the ruins of some kind of city. Our visits to Sodor, Royston Vasey, the House of Usher, Elm Street, Sesame Street, Thunder Mountain, Gravity Falls, and Silent Hills should all be fine. The nice lady at Bates Motel was very excited to have our booking. Yours, T.E. Hodden. Thank you, Thomas.
Got one here from Mark Crozer. Dalek question sent on the 22nd of the 3rd, 2020 at 8:51. Oh, I nearly got the time wrong then.
God, what?
I know.
What?
You fool, you old fool. Says here, good gravy, Benji and Nick. Certainly is. Loving the podcast as always, but wondering if you can help me. I've had a bit of John Pertwee dialogue stuck in my head for quite some time, and I'm trying to remember which Dalek story it comes from. The line, which is hilariously awful, is inside each of those machines is a living, quivering blob of hate. It's actually, is it? I thought it was
bubbling,
hate.
Living, bubbling lump of hate.
Lump of hate, which I'm sure is addressed to Joe Grant. I was certain it was from Day of the Dailies, it says here. Nope.
Day of the Dailies?
But maybe I'm wrong, as I've searched that story's transcripts online and couldn't spot it. I wonder if it was cut from the most recent version, as it's so bad.
No!
Maybe I'll have to dig out my VHS copy from the lost.
For goodness
thanks,
sake.
chats. Keep up the great work. Best wishes, Mark Crozer.
Yes, well, Mark, for goodness sake. You know what our favourite Dalek story is? Well, the one we go on about a lot. Death to the Daleks is from Death to the Daleks.
Death to the Daleks,
Inside that is a living, bubbling lump of hate, the Doctor says to Sarah, just after they've escaped being sacrificed by the Exilons. I didn't even look this up, I just know it.
Oh, it's burnt into our minds, isn't it, I think, quite frankly.
That's how full of rubbish my head is.
It was a line invented to essentially showcase that the Daleks weren't in fact robots, there were creatures inside, although you don't see them in this story. Although, interesting enough, the Daleks act almost the most robotic in this story than possibly any other.
Why do you say that?
Because they're just constantly repeating the same things. More workers! More workers! Moving around, I'm in control.
You will obey. You will
yeah, exactly.
obey. It's what Michael Wisher trying to make something of repeating the lines.
I love it. Oh, I've got shivers just thinking about it. I love it that much. Well, there we go. That's the email. So remember, if you want to email into the future, you can. podcast@nicholasbriggs.com, and then you'll be able to contact us. Simple as that. Contact.
Yeah. So, last week we talked about the first episode of the two-part finale of the 1995 series by Jerry Anderson and the band, Space Precinct, The Fire Within. So we're going to do the second episode now. We've watched just over lunch. Actually, we watched it.
Yeah, that's
The
right.
Fire Within Part 2. Well, I'd watched. I mean, not that you really need to know, but I watched the first half of it last night. Then I had a bottle of Doom Bar and had the Zoom birthday party of a friend of mine. And
Zoom Bar?
Zoom Bar, which we stopped to go out and clap at the NHS outside and then came back in to
I had an
party.
absolutely horrific experience last night clapping for the NHS.
Did you?
Yeah, so I was out there.
A small hedgehog had got between your hands.
Oh, it was so painful, yeah, and I stepped on a rake. No, I was out there clapping, as you do.
That's clapping, yeah.
The house 2 doors down has a big white dog.
Yes.
Like a sort of husky-like thing.
Is it a ghost dog? Yes.
Ghost dog, yes, it is, Dad. And anyway, it jumped over their garden gate and started running around the road. And it ran into the road and was going across and running around, so where I live is it's quite a busy.
Clapping?
It's quite a busy. It's quite a busy road. So anyway, this dog's running around and people are looking confused because, of course, everybody's social distancing. So nobody's run. So anyway, I the owner's trying to run after the dog. So I run out into the road to try and stop the cars. Because you've got loads of cars are coming back and forth and stuff, and so it was really traumatic, and everybody was running to try and get this dog, and I've no idea. The awful thing is I've no idea what happened because it was so fast. It ran down the road and then went down a side street, and so I've no idea what happened to it. But it was incredibly
it's obviously
stressful.
not had enough exercise during this lockdown.
Well, either that or maybe it got spooked because we had loads of clapping and things banging and fireworks and car horns.
Do you have fireworks?
Yeah, somebody lit off fireworks. Somewhere.
I had a firework last night, yeah.
But yeah, so it was very traumatic.
Dear. That's awful.
But what can one do? What can one do?
Anyway, so I did finally watch the second half of Space Precinct, The Fire Within Part 2. And you've seen it now, haven't you?
Yes,
Benji?
I watched it over lunch. Yes, very enjoyable.
Now, you gave it 4 stars last time, and I gave it 3. A hearty, affectionate, loving 3. Are you still loving it?
Yeah, I think it deserves everything. I mean, the thing about doing a part 2 on something like this is that all the same points really still stand. I think it's gorgeous. I think that that some of the stuff in this particular episode is so impressive. Like when one of the characters is engulfed by fire. You see it's the best. In many films you see people set on fire, but I have to say this is one of the best stunts I've ever seen. It looked so vicious and painful, the all-engulfing fire.
Jamie spoke a lot, didn't he, about how some of this had to be edited and changed and shot in a different way for the BBC screening, because this was bought by Sky and the BBC, and Sky had first option, but the BBC made, because they wanted to show it at sort of 6 o'clock, not sort of 6 o'clock, actually 6 o'clock. Benji's just disappeared. The sort of weird chroma key has made his face disappear. It's a talking pole. So I'm betting, because when we told Jamie that we'd seen Captain Dewberry's daughter set alight and thrown off a cliff, he said, I think you saw that version, did you? Not the BBC one. And so I reckon that bit was probably changed for the BBC. Also, when one of the villains is killed at the end, he's shot, and as he slides down the wall, there's a huge blood stain on the wall behind him.
It's pretty out there.
They must have done another version of that shot for the BBC as well, I would think. We can ask Richard James about this when he comes on in a few minutes.
I dare say, yeah, he'll be able to dish out the detail. But again, with this one, the model work was sublime, superb, especially all the stuff like in space, and it was just, there's something about it. It's one of those shows. Watching it, I think it's a shame that it never went on to kind of do more, because when you watch it, it's still one of the most impressive bits of visuals I've ever seen.
I feel slightly ashamed that I've been so rotten about it in the past, because it's just great stuff. I mean, I completely agree with what Jamie was saying about how, they wanted to insert more sort of family-friendly stuff. So there's all that spurious nonsense with him and his wife and kids and laughing about how many biscuits they're eating. You think shoehorned in is not an adequate phrase to describe the completely incongruous nature of this nonsense being chucked in there. And it's just... think, just stick to the story, that's much more interesting. And and I love the fact that it's all preposterous nonsense, but they're all playing it for absolute real. I mean, those masks are ridiculous, aren't they, of the Altarians? They just look like they're wearing fleshy VR masks. But beautifully done, but the design is so odd and so sort of a kid's drawing of an alien. It's sort of...
But again, it somehow works, doesn't it? It all somehow comes together in a way that's not ridiculous. I mean, with this, can you imagine if it was done with a BBC budget? I mean, can you imagine just how dreadful it would have been?
Yeah.
But it reminds me similarly of I can't remember watching Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the BBC version, when you go on that spaceship first of all, and the dark corridors. I remember watching that as a kid and thinking, like, this is really good, like, this is a spaceship. But of course,
then you saw Zaphod Beeblebrox's second head.
Yeah, and then you just see the Vogons, and you think, oh god, same old sort of thing. But with this, it's the same thing in the sense that you watch it, you get a sense of like, wow, this is it, like that's what it is. This is space.
Well, it's really, really expensive. The most expensive show of its kind at the time, which I think was always Jerry Anderson's ambition to always make his shows the most expensive.
No, but I think it still for me gets a solid 4, because I just think it's groundbreaking telly. I think it could have done. I think actually, if it had a second season, I say season because it's sort of more American centric, isn't it? I mean,
yes.
Second series, but I think it would have been good. They could have ironed out a few creases, dealt with a few things that maybe weren't working, and I think it could have become something really rather special.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say that, the writing's a bit sort of standard, but the plots work. I'm trying to... You see, folks, in case you don't know, the plot is about a religious sect called the Pyrrhus or something. It's all about... They worship the flame within. And really, it turns out in this episode that they're just wanting to rip people off, and then when they're going to they tell them the day of the flame or something of immolation is coming, and they tell everyone to hide in the chamber of winds, where presumably they're all meant to fart a lot.
I was going to say, it's where you go after you've had a curry.
And so but what they're actually doing is, and they say, bring all your money because we need that for where we're going. And so everyone brings sort of stacks of cash. Notice that they're all bringing wads of notes, and they put it in a big chest, and that's not suspicious at all, isn't it? Then they all go down in the Chamber of Winds. But that, of course, it turns out that their temple, their church, is in fact a rocket ship. And they're going to take off and fire the rocket exhaust into the Chamber of Winds and annihilate all these people, or rather immolate, I should say. So for goodness sake, it's horrible, isn't it? And Officer Haldane, who I last time called Officer Hardon because he's just always making smutty innuendos and can't resist chatting women up at every given opportunity. He pretends so well to be part of the religion that his associates start to believe him, don't they?
They do, yeah. It's sort of, yeah, I mean, sort of.
And he's also hit upon the lead priestess as well, hasn't he?
Well, I mean, that was bound to happen the second he got in there, really, wasn't it?
But then he's quite sorry that she dies. He looks all upset, whereas she was trying to commit a form of genocide.
And she, I mean, obviously she died, but she didn't really get much of a comeuppance. You know, you want to take her aside and say, well, look what you're doing.
Good talking to.
You know, the way she died made me laugh, though. It was like, you know, it's like she says that one line and then just plonks her head down. Like, you know, if you're going to do an on-screen death, unless she's in mortifying, agonising pain, you want to drift away, you know, really make that last line.
What did you think of the big yellow handle?
I thought it was quite fun, actually.
For the retro, I mean, because Officer Haldane's sort of pinned to the floor with, she keeps swerving the ship around once it's taken off, so everyone's falling over. And you should really sort of put the Benny Hill chase music over all that. They're all falling over, but suddenly the main character, Brogan, gets to wrestle the controls with her, and Haldane really, the main control she's operating is an enormous yellow lever control thing. Yeah. It's huge, isn't it?
Massive.
And it's big and bright yellow. And Haldane keeps shouting to him, the yellow, like there's anything else.
Yeah. And then when he is wrestling with it, you think to yourself, he's probably sitting there thinking, oh, if only I had some WD-40. You know, I could do this in seconds. I could save the day.
Also, the controls of the spaceship are run by the organ in the church, aren't they? So you play a tune to make it.
That'd get irritating after a while, wouldn't it? You can't do anything subtly, can you? You know, you're thinking, oh, all right, I better turn the lights off so everybody can get some sleep on the ship.
I wonder what the 1960s theme of Southern Television's news magazine programme, Day by Day, which parts of the universe would that get you to?
Yeah, a garage in somewhere like, I don't know, Ackminster. That's exactly where it is.
Axminster.
No, Ackminster. I don't know where. I think Ackminster is a place I've always. Does it even exist?
I don't know. Axminster does. It's fairly near.
Axminster does, but Ackminster sounds funnier.
It does. It sounds like a place where people have got lots of coughs.
Ackminster.
Right now, let's. I've got to invite someone. I've got to invite Richard, but Zoom, because they're worried about security, are changing the setup of everything by the minute. Invite. There it is. Just invite Richard James. Send that invitation now. So have we got any questions to ask Richard, do you think?
Well, I think there'll be plenty. I think the conversation will flow. I want to ask him about the masks and how, A, were they comfortable, and B, how loud they must have been with all the stuff going on inside.
Oh, I wonder. Yeah,
that's a good question.
Do you have any last summings up of this?
Good television. I think good telly, groundbreaking for its time, doesn't always hit the mark where it should, but worth a watch. Deserves better, perhaps.
And Crispin Merrill's music in this I thought was particularly good. He does a few renditions of his theme during the chasing. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, really good. I did think that when Brogan and another ship were chasing Haldane, where they still didn't know he was on their side, he could have just got on the radio and say, "Guys, I was just pretending." I don't know why he keeps it a secret. Of course,
he's enjoying it all.
Well, he keeps it a secret so they can have a chase sequence. But I feel that maybe there should have been a better reason for that.
No,
but maybe I'm
we
quibbling.
must keep keep it going for a bit longer. I want to have a chase. I want to see what this baby can do.
I keep thinking you're reading the news for Southern Television.
Hello there. This is.
Peter Clark used to be their newsreader, and he used to have this thing where he used to do like this. Can you see? He used to sort of go, "And today," and it was like he was constantly clenching his buttocks, which would spring him up in the air by an inch. It was very Peter Clark. And he was terribly. He sort of looked like a bank manager, Peter Clark.
A sensible pair of hands.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, you get a lot of different newsreader styles at that time. Obviously, we've done the female broadcast of that time. You also have, you have the men who speak a little bit like this in a sort of candid way. So, the Prime Minister today was pictured leaving Chequers and going along to do this. But
Chequers plays pop.
Chequers plays... The Prime Minister was leaving Keith Chegwin this morning after a row.
Oh my God, I've got a picture of Peter Clark for you. Oh my God. This is which is the best one? Oh, I'll send you this one. Because this is... Oh, no, that's not right. He's actually got there's actually peterclark.co.uk.
No way. Is he still alive?
Television reporter, newsreader, and family man. Peter Clark, yes.
And
more than 5,000 appearances on Southern TV's Day by Day and Television South's Coast to Coast over 28 years. Wow. Isn't that incredible? Well, I don't know. I don't know whether it's really incredible.
peterclark.co.uk. Is it Clark with an E?
Yes.
No. Is there a dash between Peter and Clark?
No. Oh, it's Peter D. Clark without an E. Sorry.
No wonder I was getting an estate agency.
Well, he's
diversified.
Peter Clark.
Oh yes, I recognise him.
Yeah.
Well, he did it quite a while then. Ended up on old TVS as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to watch him doing a news bulletin.
In the house.
Oh, and there's Barry, what's his name? Peter Clark for this week's complaint box. You just said, so you go out to a do and you leave your coat in a hotel cloakroom.
I just saw my first clip of him was I clicked Coast to Coast, to which he says, a gypsy family was left in an upset today after two members killed each other. Oh, God. News was
nasty.
Pretty wild that day.
Barry Westwood was
Barry
the
Westwood,
main presenter.
yeah.
Did you remember him?
I recognised that, yeah.
He was the real man. And did you remember Chris Peacock, who people used to naughtily call Crispy Cock?
I've only heard the naughty joke.
Chris Peacock.
Chris Peacock.
Yeah, Chris Peacock.
What's that about? Is it Peter Honeycomb?
Gordon Honeycomb was the ITN newsreader. Chris Peacock, I can't find anything. That's interesting. Chris Peacock. Oh, there's Richard there. Oh, Richard is here. Sorry.
Is Richard here? I can't see Richard.
No, he isn't. I've just pressed admit.
Oh. What are you admitting to?
I admit it. It's Richard.
I found out an interesting thing the other day. My dad was once on holiday a few years ago. This is
with Chris Peacock.
This is in the late 80s, early 90s. And he was sitting on a pier, and next to him was Andrew Neil. And my dad at the time had no idea who Andrew Neil was.
Oh,
and so they were just sitting there having a really nice chat about normal things.
Good Lord. So, Richard, Richard, have you enabled your sound?
Hello there.
Hello.
How are you?
Are you recording?
I am recording, even as we speak. How are you, Benji? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Yes, digitally. Yes, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yes, I'm all right, thank you. Yes, I'm coping. And you, Nick, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, quite hot here, as you can see.
Crikey,
in my shed.
Yes.
Yeah,
in your
I've
garden.
got shorts on.
Good. Well, good for you. I mean, I don't want to see any more. Just stay seated.
Show us a bit of leg, Nick. How are you finding lockdown at the moment?
Well,
it's a crazy time, isn't it?
As an actor, I think we're sort of quite well disposed to mooching around the house, not doing very much, waiting for things to happen. So it's kind of, it's all right. It's all right. It's fine. I've got the family around me. The kids came back from university, so we're all snug and happy, really, you know.
Are you able to get any work of any description done?
Yes, thankfully. Bits of writing here and there. I mean, so that's all okay. But, you know, as my agent's shut up shop and gone home, no one's producing my plays, so everything else has stopped. But that's okay. We're all right. We're all right. Yeah.
Gosh, well, I'd like to apologise for the slight delay in admitting you to this meeting because we suddenly got completely sidetracked on obscure newsreaders from Southern TV from the 1970s.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch Southern TV?
No, I was Anglia TV, so I can talk about Stuart White. People like that, names that would mean nothing to you, I'd imagine.
But they all sound the same, don't they? Those names.
The same sort of person, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. They always used to go to the sports reports at Carrow Road for the local football updates. Funny what sticks with you, isn't it?
Well, we were looking up Peter Clark and a guy called Chris Peacock, which of course people ended up calling him Crispy Cock.
Of course you did. Of course you did. Because you're 5.
No, but that's what everyone did. Everyone in the Southern TV area.
Great.
He's a very tall, slender man.
Right.
He always looked as if his suits, you know, he couldn't find a suit that was thin enough for him.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I can't remember her name, but there was one presenter around my way that made her way eventually onto the national news bulletins.
Wow.
And that was like a big
they
story.
do that, don't they?
Hit the big time.
Well, there are. I mean, Fern Britton started out on Southern TV.
Right.
Yeah.
Lucy,
you don't know Fern Britton.
No, I do know Fern Britton.
Susie Fowler-Watts is one. I think she did the Anglia stuff briefly. I think she was in the 80s, but I don't know if she went on to do anything else.
Yeah, no, it's not a name I remember.
The Shopping. Sorry, that sounded massively misogynistic. Richard, what are we talking about this for? We're all here to talk about Space Precinct.
Oh, yes, so we are.
For the first time in your life, I imagine.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Space Precinct. I understand you've been watching The Fire Within, is that right?
Yeah, which is the final two-parter,
well, it's not actually, Nick. It's not the final two-parter, but it was pretty close. It's episodes 20 and 21 out of 24.
So very
Jamie
close,
told us
very
it was
close.
the final two-parter. Maybe he meant it was the last two-parter they did.
Well, no, he didn't mean that either, because actually the whole series was finished off with another two-parter, Death Watch Parts 1 and 2. So you've been completely there at the garden path, yes.
So did I maybe I didn't listen properly.
Well, that's possible with Jamie. It's very easy to tune out, isn't it? It just sort of becomes background noise.
Oh, I'm so glad he's not here. I'm not really. I miss him dreadfully.
Of course.
Well, you'll be relieved to hear, have really enjoyed it.
Now, that's very interesting to hear because it's not everyone's cup of tea, I think it's fair to say. We're talking mid-90s. We're talking early days of CGI, but some great model work from Steve Begg, Bill Pearson and so on. And we're talking really, I think, about a series that didn't quite know where it stood in terms of who it was aiming to please. I think, Nick, I heard you allude to this last week.
Yes.
Is it a kids' show? I mean, there is one episode that you haven't seen, an earlier one, where essentially you see a half-naked prostitute in bed with one of the guest characters.
I won't ask which half.
No. It is just extraordinary. I mean, there are references to drugs. There's, I think, even reference, I shudder to say it, to bestiality in one of the episodes. Yes, just a passing reference, a gag.
A passing reference.
Yes.
Aside from passing references to bestiality, this was entirely suitable for children.
I mean, I think that is the problem with it. We were saying the interesting thing is if it had gotten a second season, that would have been the opportunity, I think, for the show to really come into its own, look at what it is, look at what it isn't, and work that out. But it makes it, as it stands, I mean, coming from it with a fairly fresh perspective, I'm quite surprised that I can see where it's failed.
By the bestiality.
But I'm quite surprised by the bestiality.
Quite surprised.
But I think that it's actually quite a significant piece of television.
Yes, it certainly felt so at the time, I remember. Certainly for me, I was only 24, I think, when I did it, all those years ago. It did feel like a significant piece of television. I mean, they kept telling us it was the most, expensive TV show ever made. A claim often, afforded to Jerry Anderson Productions over the years.
Every single one.
Yeah, pretty much. But it did feel like that. I think we were one of the first sort of continuing dramas to feature on the fledgling Sky One channel. The BBC picked it up as well. I mean, there had been, I think, nothing like it, for good or ill. There had been nothing like it on certainly British TV for a long, long time, if ever. There is no other series quite like it, and it does divide opinion for that very reason, I think. You were lucky enough to watch one of the later episodes, though. I do think that the second half of the 24 episodes that we did, it does start to settle down and find its own feet, and there are some great stories in there, I think, actually.
What was your experience of working on it?
My experience of working on it, I left drama school about 1.5 years previously. It wasn't going terribly well, Nick, to be honest.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. I remember I was working in the bar at the Whitehall Theatre, as it was then, near Trafalgar Square. And I used to walk around Trafalgar Square when at the end of my shift, looking for loose change that had been dropped by tourists. Really down on my uppers. And suddenly found myself auditioning at Pinewood Studios for this strange show, and ended up getting it. I have no idea why. I mean, I was covered in 6 inches of latex and ended up being revoiced for it as well. So this.
Did you know that was going to happen?
No, not at the time.
Oh.
I think it was about 6 weeks or so in that the penny dropped, and I remember getting a call from my agent saying they're going to revoice you. And I thought they meant, they want me to go in and redub, because obviously there's going to be some extraneous noise. And I just said, yeah, fine, that's absolutely fine. And then the penny dropped. And actually, after about a week or so, I was fine with it, because it was a year's work. I was a young actor.
You're there and you're earning. Yeah,
absolutely. A really formative experience for me, working with directors who, like John Glenn, who directed The Fire Within. You're
exactly, yes. I keep forgetting to mention that John Glenn of James Bond fame.
Absolutely.
Huge, yeah.
And he was sort of a regular director for us, and brought many people from his contact book along with him. Stephen Burkoff, Jack Hedley, who you've seen in The Fire Within.
Yes, that's why he was in it, of course.
I think he was in For Your Eyes Only, possibly.
Yeah, gets machine gunned at the beginning, doesn't he?
That's right, he does on the boat, that's it. Mariam Darbo appeared in one of the... Clive Merrison.
Really?
Oh, yeah, Burt Kwok. Who he knew as well. So yes, to work with such fantastic directors and some amazing guest actors, let alone the fact that for a year I was, sitting pretty as a young actor, was a great experience.
And you've written a book about it, haven't you?
Space Precinct Unmasked is available on Amazon or via the Jerry Anderson website.
There you go.
So obviously, I mean, a key thing there is obviously the mask itself.
Yeah.
One thing I'm curious to know, obviously, you're behind this latex thing, but there must be a lot of animatronics going on underneath there. So what was that like? Was it comfortable? Was it loud and noisy?
It was not comfortable, but it was certainly loud and noisy, yes. The eyes and the various sort of facial muscles were... they used mechanical servos, and they made a noise. So every time the eyes moved, you heard a sort of a zip, 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 zip. Which was very often picked up by the sound department, which did result in lots of revoicing once we'd shot the scenes. So yes, very noisy. Vision was very limited, as you can imagine. We sort of saw through a kind of between the various wrinkles in the mask, and in the early
that
episodes.
Where it was?
Yeah,
right.
I think you can actually see us hugging the furniture as we try and make our way around. But we got the hang of it. Some people found it quite difficult to cope with. There's an actor called Ken Drury that you might well know, a Scottish actor. You know his face if you saw him, because he's a very established TV actor. Actually auditioned originally and accepted the role of a regular character, Sergeant Fredo, the desk sergeant. But on the first day, when we all turned up and put the masks on for the first time to sort of parade in front of Jerry and get his yay or his nay, he freaked out. He had something of a panic attack. Couldn't cope.
Wow.
So he had to back out. He had to drop out.
Started tearing his face off.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, exactly. And it went eventually to David Quilter. So some people found it more difficult than others. Luckily, I found it okay. It was all right. It was hot and it was uncomfortable, but I could deal with it.
Yes, I just looked him up. I do recognise him. Yes,
he's got. Yeah, I recognise him.
Yeah.
But I can imagine, for you, it must have been sort of at the time thinking, well, this is not just a job, this is something a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I went for my live cast where they, put the gloop on your face to make a mould, to make the mask. And Richard Gregory, I think, who we all know, who did lots of work with classic Doctor Who and Batman movies and so on, was doing the live cast for me. And I said at the time, I thought, well, this was sort of my recall, and I remember thinking, this is probably quite an expensive process. I wonder how many people they're putting through this for this part. So I asked Richard, and he said, well, let's put it this way, you're on a short list of 1. And he said, and by the way, we're looking at 5 series and a movie. I thought, okay, well, that's quite exciting, considering I'm barely struggling to pay my rent on a little 1-bedroom flat in Seven Sisters Road at the moment. The following 4 series after our first and the movie never materialised, but nevertheless, it was a fantastic year to spend at Pinewood Studios.
Richard, I haven't ever shared with you my story of poverty as an actor when I was in Covent Garden.
Yes.
And I went to the cash point, and just as I went to it to key in to get £5 out or whatever I was getting out, I think it was £20 just came out and stuck there, because the previous person had obviously, I don't know, and it was just there, £20 in front of me.
Wow.
And I looked over my shoulder both ways. There was no one around. I just took it. It's terrible, isn't it?
Of course you do. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I was so poor. Years later, though, I was on tour. I was in some town or other, and I saw someone walk away, and they'd forgotten to take their money. And as I went to put my card in, all this money came out.
What?
And there was a very long queue for cash money. So I grabbed it and I ran down the street after them and gave it back to them.
Good for you.
To atone for my
There you go.
sort of.
Yeah, I mean, it did come at just the right time for me. I often wonder where I'd be. I also met my wife during the show as well, so it really did change my life in many, many ways.
What was she doing?
Well, she was an assistant editor, so she worked in the editing department, but we were all under one roof, you see. Normally, as you know, you might shoot a scene somewhere and it gets taken off to Soho to be put together, and you never see the editing process happening, but we were all under one roof at L&M Block in Pinewood. So we'd all, socialised together.
There's something very special about that place, Pinewood, isn't there?
Yeah, of course there is.
I've been there for some jobs now and again.
I mean, it's very different now. I haven't been there for years, but I understand it's very different now and looks very corporate and has been updated. But so I remember seeing, parking spaces for, is it Peter Rogers, who the producer of the Carry On movies? Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
Going past parking space of Diana Rigg, parking space and all this sort of stuff. We saw Sean Connery driving out one day. We saw Richard Gere practicing his sword fighting for the first night in the car park behind us. I remember walking onto the 007 stage once and seeing the set of Victorian London from Mary Riley, the Julia Roberts. Was it Mary Riley, I think? The sort of
it was. Yeah. I never watched it.
No.
It seemed like an awful film.
Yeah. So just extraordinary times, really.
Wow. And did you were able to sort of observe a lot of the other processes involved in the production of Space Precinct?
Very much so, absolutely. We did all live under the same roof, really, for that year. So you could literally do your scene on the studio floor one day, and a couple of days later, if you had a spare 5 minutes, you might wander down the corridor to the editing department, sit with John Glenn, see him putting it together, have a word with Crispin Morel, who did the music, and see how that was coming together, and then 3 or 4 weeks later sit in a viewing room and see the finished episode. It was just extraordinary. I've never known anything like it since. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And did you encounter Jerry Anderson very much?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Throughout all of it, really, he was more of you have to remember, his role was producer. He wasn't a director. He did sometimes come onto the studio floor. But I think his main concern was keeping the series afloat. I mean, from what I understand now, and we were pretty shielded from it at the time, it went through a lot of financial difficulties. Sometimes it wasn't clear whether we'd get the funding to do the next few months' work. I know that now, didn't know it at the time. So I think he spent a lot of his time trying to secure the funding and probably tearing out what little hair he had left. So I didn't see a great deal of him, to be honest. I'm not entirely sure by the end of the year that he would have known who I was if I'd walked past him without the mask on. It is strange wearing that thing. It does create a distance between you and people around you, so much so they sometimes forget. There's a great story of another actor, Rob Thurtle, who used to play our sort of guest alien of the week. And we had a director called Sidney Hayers, a rather old chap, like a lot of them were, to be honest, but that was great because they brought their wealth of experience with them. He'd worked on things like The A-Team and Knight Rider and so on. And this actor, Rob, was playing this particular character, and in between scenes, they'd switch off the animatronic eyes, and their default position was to close. So this director, Sidney Hayers, was giving Rob some notes, and of course they switched off the animatronics and the eyes closed. And Sidney turned to him and went, "Are you listening to me?" And, you had to explain, well, yes, I am. So this is a mask.
Yes.
And very often, well, I say very often, I certainly remember having once or twice, you'd be doing a scene and you'd get to the end of the scene, you'd be sitting there in all the prosthetics with all those hot lights as they were in those days, sweating buckets. Lunch would be called, and everyone would just walk away.
Yes.
And they'd just leave you, thinking you were sort of part of the furniture.
Yeah.
So it really does create a strange barrier because they can't see the person inside,
And how long would it take
That happens
you?
with the Dalek guys on
Of course.
Sorry, Benji.
It's a famous Dalek thing, isn't it?
Sure.
Everybody go off for lunch and they're left there, just
Yeah.
can't even get out.
No.
So how long would it take you to get out of the mask and get into it? Was it a long makeup process?
No, I mean, it was specifically designed because there were so many of us in the stuff. And it wasn't a particularly tight turnaround, but of course time is money, It was specifically designed to be fairly quick to apply. I think by the end, so by the time we got to episodes like The Fire Within, maybe 20, 25 minutes to get it all on. I mean, it was in certain sections, so we had a chin section that was actually glued to our face. But everything else kind of slotted in and popped together using poppers, and in between takes we were able to take the top of the head off. I mean, there are various pictures of us on the internet with our lids off, cooling down a bit. And likewise, at the end of the day, it was a fairly quick process to get out of it. I was lucky enough to play some other roles. Of course, the great thing about playing a masked character is that you could be asked to play other roles. John Glenn gave me other parts, and Sidney Hayers as well, and Neil Gorton was also involved. So Richard Gregory would do the main masks, and Neil Gorton would do the sort of guest alien kind of creatures sometimes.
Neil's subsequently worked a lot on Doctor Who.
That's right. And again, so I was lucky enough to play another role. I played this sort of vampire character, which inspired a whole generation of kids to have nightmares about me at the time, and they still get in touch with me now.
Really?
And that did take a lot longer. That was your classic 3 hours in the makeup chair, which is quite fun to do, actually, but it did mean getting there obscenely early in the morning and being one of the last people to leave, But for those...
Did you ever fall asleep in the chair?
I don't remember that, but I do remember finding it a not unpleasant experience.
Just nice and relaxing.
Yeah, likewise the whole Lifecast thing, where they put the stuff on your face. I found that quite, because it heats up.
It does.
And it's very
warm.
warm.
I've had that done once, just for a frivolous thing. Yeah.
And it
and I was okay about it.
And they put music on to kind of, keep you, calm. So it's actually quite a nice soporific effect.
Now, I asked you about any contact with Jerry Anderson. What about young Jamie was on the set? Did you ever see him?
From a distance. I mean, I tried to, keep at least 6 feet away, I think, as he recommended.
Do you think, what's that little oik doing here?
I do remember him being around, like a fly buzzing about. And he has a story that he was slightly scared of me because he'd seen his dad had brought, the finished episodes home with him or whatever. So he'd seen my character, Orin, on the screen, but of course with a different voice. So when he met me in the corridor and I said, "Oh, hello," he was sort of scared out of his wits, really, as to what was going on. But I certainly remember him being around.
He would have been about 9, wouldn't he?
He was about 9 at the time, with his mop of black hair. That's right. How times have
so
changed.
hard to imagine.
I know. Yes, and then met up with him again after his dad died. Because my wife Charlotte then went on to work at the BBC, and she actually cut Jerry's obituary on Boxing Day when he died in 2012, I think.
Good Lord.
So she got in touch with Jamie via Facebook and said, just to let you know, I've done this thing for your dad, and I have very fond memories. And I sort of got in touch with him again that way, and then met him a year or so later.
Isn't that funny? So we sort of met him properly round about the same time then, because it was only a few months after his dad died that I met him at a convention.
Well, exactly. I think, he'll tell you this himself, that really he held back while his dad was still around, but once Jerry had died, I think Jamie felt freer to explore the business, the entertainment, creative industry more, and so I think he sort of did start to dive in then to conventions and productions and so on to getting where he is now.
So you got in touch with him and said what?
Well,
I scared you when you were 9.
Yeah. He then replied and said, well, look, I'm doing Brit Sci-Fi in Leicester. Have a word with Mark Dando, who I think you know as well. And,
yes, I do.
Grab a ticket, come along as a guest and let's meet up there. So we did, and the rest is history. And now we're producing the Jerry Anderson podcast every week, amongst many other things.
Yes, come on.
Yeah, so there we are.
Get in.
Yes. So that's a rather nice kind of circular thing, isn't it? Meeting someone all those years ago and then meeting up with them again later in adult life. It's quite sweet.
It's lovely. And getting on as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Because, we can be really nice about him because he's not here.
Yeah, for now.
He is one of the nicest people you could meet, isn't he?
Lovely man.
And one of the hardest working as well. I mean,
yes.
Gosh, every week he's got stories of things he's been up to and projects he's trying to get off the ground. I mean, I don't know how he does it. He's juggling several plates at once, isn't he?
Yeah. He's in a constant struggle.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah. But that's the business. I mean, that's the whole thing, isn't it? That his dad warned him off. I think, and again, Jamie won't mind me saying because I think it's a matter of public record. But when Jamie in his youth said, I'd like to follow in your footsteps, Dad, Jerry said, well, I will slam every door in your face because the business is full of a-holes. Was the actual phrase, I think. So that was Jerry's attitude. But God, he's embracing it now, isn't he?
Yeah, and because even then Jamie went on to sort of run another business, didn't he? So
yes.
He clearly had that acumen to sort of run things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder if he was biding his time. I've not really spoken to him about it in depth, but I wonder if he was consciously waiting until the time was right, and I think perhaps it was always in the back of his mind that actually this is what he wanted to do.
Well, welcome everyone to the Jamie Anderson Appreciation.
Yes, you'll cut all this, of course, when you can't have any of this going out.
Yeah. Well, bless him. Yeah. He'll never listen to it anyway because he'll be too busy.
Yeah, that's true.
Trying to make a TV series or something.
Or 3.
Yeah. So, Richard, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, yeah.
I mean, this is much nicer than the Jerry Anderson podcast. You've got scatter cushions and flock wallpaper. Are those pictures yours, Benji? Those retro LP covers?
They certainly are, yes, they are.
No, it's nice. I like what you've done with the place. I like it.
Help yourself to a banana cocktail over there, whatever that is.
Well, I will, thank you.
I've got the machine.
Thank you very much.
That's a banana cocktail machine.
It only makes banana cocktails.
Banana Cocktailatron. An Anderson production.
But there's one thing I'd like to ask you for our benefit, which is that what are we going to do? What do you think Benji and I should do next week? We usually watch a programme and then come and talk about it.
Crikey.
Is there anything you would like to recommend to us to watch?
I mean, that's putting me on the spot with no prior warning at all.
I mean,
you've done so much now. I mean, I would go for the Knights of God, which I know you've covered already.
Have we actually watched it?
Yeah, we have covered the Knights of God, yeah.
We watched the first episode, didn't we? Yeah.
That was a funny one, that was. It was a strange series, that.
Did you ever get around to watching Sky?
Yes.
Okay, you see, you've done that. What about Lizzie Dripping?
Oh, my God.
See? Are we digging deep there? So, again, I remember this is 1970s Kids ITV, I think, although I grew up in a BBC
I think it's
household.
BBC.
There we go. So, yes, that makes sense.
Because the woman who played Lizzie Dripping later became a presenter of Blue Peter.
Who's that, then? Come along.
Benji?
Tina Heath.
Did she? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I remember it being slightly weird and a bit disturbing, but then, I was only 6 or 7 and everything kind of worried me slightly at that age.
We're more or less the same age, aren't we?
I think I'm
Richard?
substantially younger than you, Nick.
Oh, I...
Hey!
Sorry,
no,
fair enough.
I think we are, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I remember watching Lizzie Dripping and not much liking it. And then when she turned up on Blue Peter, which I liked, I thought, oh, God,
that's
not
ruined
that
it.
stupid girl.
I have a hunch that Lizzie Dripping will be an unusual hit for us on this podcast. There's something about it. I've seen it before. And briefly, I've seen clips of it. I've never sat and watched the full thing, but it is an intriguing bit of television, actually.
Now, have you got something of a synopsis in front of you there, Benji, or not? Because I don't remember much about it. I must say.
It says here, half-naked prostitutes and drug addicts with bestiality issues.
Yes.
Set in a country village of Little Hemlock, where a young girl, Penelope, with a vivid imagination,
you see, it's already getting weird.
Yeah, it is. Played by future presenter Tina Heath, encounters a local witch with whom she can see and hear. The singular ability is further complicated by the fact that Penelope has established a reputation for being an imaginative liar, making it even more difficult for her to convince others that the witch is real. That's quite a good idea.
You see?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Richard, thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome.
That's brilliant.
My gift to you.
All right, and then what we do, at the end of the podcast, we just come close to the microphone. Can you come
All of us?
close to anything?
Nice, all of us.
All right,
Just come
okay.
You want to get nice and intimate with the microphone there, and this is when we say our goodbyes. So, thank you so much, Richard, and it's goodbye from me.
Well, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. Pressing stop now. Ka-chink.